Hello and a very warm welcome to Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. And my guest today is a woman who's gained an international reputation for herself as an exquisite and accomplished garden designer. She says gardens are a great source of well-being and happiness, and that gardening is, wait for it, sexy. And here she is, Gabriella Pape. Gabriella, thank you very much for joining us here on Talking Germany today.
Hello.
OK, Gabriella, I've mentioned it already. Gardening is sexy, says you.
Yes, that doesn't mean it replaces it. But it's like cooking, you know. Both have become very sensual, very you know, people like touching gardens because they don't only consist of lawns anymore and hedges. So it's about flowers, it's about smelling, it's about feeling, it's about movement, like with grasses. So it's a very, very for English people, of course, it's not a new discovery, but for a lot of German people, yes, it is a new discovery.
It's trendy.
And it is trendy. Yeah. Yes,
even
it's to do with more leisure time. It's to do with what do I actually do with that plot of land of mine. Yeah.
And there are lots of... I mean, the age range of the people involved in gardening is changing now. Lots of young gardeners are...
Yes.
How old?
Well, in Britain, my clients used to be between 24 and 55 or 60, and in Germany they were between 50 and 102, but that has changed. So... I would say between 30 and 60, it's the main... But lots of young people, lots of 30-year-old. Also at the Garden Academy, I love seeing young couples with babies, and it is more something that is not snuffed upon.
Gabriella, some people, the song goes, were born to be wild. Were you born to garden?
Totally, yes. I have never, ever considered anything else. It was not... No, never came to my mind. Wasn't so popular in the beginning with my parents when I said I'll leave school and go and be a gardener. That was not, you know... It was allowed, but it wasn't applauded.
One of the... You've got a book on the market, the title of the book, or at least I'm not sure it's the title or the tagline, My Living Garden Philosophy.
Yeah.
That seems to imply that there is such a thing as a dead garden.
Yes. Yes, it's what I call the pieces of land, because there's sort of a couple of people come to me and say, I have a garden, and I say, are you sure it's a garden and not a piece of land? Yeah, lawn and just one forsythia or so, that's a dead garden. That's not...
Wait, you're a bit of a... In your books, you're a bit of a gardening philosopher, I think it's fair to say, yeah? I'd like to challenge you with this question. Why should we mess with nature at all in the first place? Isn't nature good enough in itself?
Yes, it is. It's fantastic. But we've always had that... We want to tame everything in nature.
Tame.
We want tame. It's about taming. Garden, in its word, is already like from the Garden Eden or so. It is actually, as soon as we say garden, it's tamed. It's something enclosed, comes out of the 13th and 14th century when we really tried to sort of enclose ourselves. People built walls, hide. And, of course, nourishment. Nourishment was the first movement why we were made out of wild carrots. We bred a really big, fat carrot, or out of wild potatoes from Peru. We made a big McDonald, you know. I mean, we've always wanted to, first due to nourishment, and wanted to feed ourselves, and later because we thought we can make nature more beautiful. That's not necessarily my aim, but it has always been... We do the same with cars, we do the same with children, we do this with everything. It's to do with control. I think it's a human nature.
That's extremely interesting. And you've got your approach to gardening. It has a lot to do with your biography. We've seen you've got two souls. You've got your British soul and your German soul, and you've got the two schools of thought about gardening. You say that the British do gardening with their heart, and the German do gardening with their head, and you want to bring the two together.
Yes, because I think the two actually belong together. I mean, we've seen that over the last century. With the English weather changing dramatically, we have hosepipe bans in February, so they have actually a problem putting any plant they like aesthetically in the right place, whereas Germans have always sort of ecologically more, you know, if you have a sandy soil, you can only have sandy soil plants. They wouldn't actually want to do something to the soil to improve it. So more the ecological approach, that means you can't, certain plants you can't have, whereas the English don't matter, you just change the soil and you can have that isn't the case anymore. So the two have already come closer. There's a lot of prairie gardening coming from America. Prairie gardening and the German movement, of German perennial movement, looking at plants more ecological. Extremely interested is the English public in that. Grasses, they used to have grasses only as lawn. Grasses are very drought resistant, or a lot of grasses. So yes, there is a big change in English gardening and in German. The German's getting more aesthetically pleasing and the English is getting more ecological. So there's a great exchange of knowledge.
Gabriella, have you ever done any guerrilla gardening?
Yes, actually it comes originally from England, and I think it's now, unfortunately, almost 25 years ago that I studied there. And we, as students from Kew Gardens, we always had seed bombs in our...
Seed bombs?
Yeah, they're little clay balls in which you roll seed. Preferably not pernicious, sort of nasty weeds, but anything that like cosmos and stuff like that germinates very fast. As soon as you throw it out of the car or from the bicycle onto a roundabout or a garden you don't like. I'm not supposed to say that, I think. Yes, and you throw it, and as soon as the rain comes, they germinate, and you sort of cycle past a couple of weeks later, and it's all flowering. It's very...
Gabriella, you're a radical, yeah?
Well, I think it's the only way to come, sort of... go forward.
It's this community, this guerrilla gardening thing. It's a little bit. It's not just about the plants and the vegetables, is it? We heard in the report it's about community spirit and generating community spirit as well.
I do support that greatly, because there's a lot of spaces, especially in Berlin, where developers and investors have been fighting. I don't know, for now, since the wall came down, since 1998 or 89. Okay, yeah. They've been fighting what's meant to happen, and they're just barren. And I think it's wonderful that people just use them until any decision has been made.
It's interesting that in Berlin, a lot of those gaps between the buildings are actually still there from the Second World War. The buildings were bombed out and pulled down at the end of the war. We're talking about big city gardening. One thing I did want to talk to you about is that this British-German thing, that in Britain, people tend to live in houses. Don't want to generalise too much. And here in Germany, people tend to live in apartments. And in fact, I was amazed that you told me just now that you too live in an apartment. Yeah?
Yes, it's a serious problem. I feel like a tiger in a cage. But I have a balcony. And the Garden Academy, we had to learn very quickly that there is a huge demand on balcony plants and how you do, what you actually do on a balcony. Because in England, everybody has a garden, even if it's only the size of my balcony. Yeah. And that is also the background, really, that why English have that tradition of gardening. They grow up looking at mom and dad doing something in the garden, whatever it is. And that is not necessarily here the case, because there are hundreds of thousands of people living in 4- or 5-story blocks, and that makes a big difference to their gardening style and needs.
Sure. You just mentioned your Royal Gardening Academy here in Berlin. I went down there last weekend. It's a wonderful place. There are lots of wonderful things, lovely courses on offer, lots of products that I can buy, plants and all, everything to do with the garden, except garden gnomes.
Yes, no gnomes.
No gnomes.
No,
You're
I'm not so hot on gnomes.
Person.
No. Well, it's not true. I tried to get one, and my statistic that I don't like them and they shouldn't be bought has completely been faltered, because I couldn't get one. They were sold out. I was going to bring one today.
You were going to bring one
as
today?
A joke, sort of thing, saying I like gnomes.
I do so.
And unfortunately, they were completely sold out. So no gnomes today. But. Okay.
She's been swearing and cussing during that report, yeah?
Extraordinary.
Come on, you're a gnome snob.
Yeah.
You admit it. Yeah. The Chelsea Flower Show, we've talked about that already. You won a prize there. I'm told that garden gnomes are actually banned at the Chelsea Flower Show.
They
Is
are
that true?
banned, but there's always these two guys who smuggle in 1 or 2 gnomes, and they place them in prize-winning gardens, take a quick photograph, and then they give them to the newspapers, which I actually find highly amusing. But it didn't happen in my garden. I was quite disappointed. German garden without gnomes.
German garden, no gnomes. Yeah, they are associated with Germany, aren't they? You, part of what you've been doing in recent years, you have called land art. And that strikes me as being a reference to the land art movement, where people in landscapes, artists put all sorts of natural things like stones and wood and what have you. Is that what you see as an important enhancement for gardening?
No, I think that is actually quite a difficult, completely separate branch of gardening, like Andy Goldsworthy or famous people who make earth movement or create walls and stuff that go through landscapes. Unfortunately, when I called my business that, I was involved in that type of garden or landscaping, but there's so little about that you couldn't possibly make a living of it. So I then went really into garden design and smaller spaces. But it is a very, very important thing on the art. It's really an art, whereas I always consider my profession more of a craft than an art.
I see. So more traditional gardening, ultimately.
Yeah, horticulture.
Yeah, exactly. Gabriella, I'd like to mention there's one garden here near Berlin, about an hour's drive away from Berlin, which is called the Wörlitz Garden. Gabriella, just tell us about this garden, because it's very special.
It is very, very special, but it's very old and it's strongly influenced from the English garden movement. Actually, that reminds me of Kew Gardens, the Chinese pagoda. But it's really a Landschaftspark, as a landscape.
A landscape park.
Yes, a landscape park, where you move. You always being attracted by one pavilion or something, and you don't know how to get there, and you meander through the meadows, and then you get there and you see something else. It's a typical English picturesque movement landscape park, which Pückler Muskau was strongly influenced by.
Now, Gabriella, do you play bridge?
No.
No bridge. Do you make your own scones?
I used to in England, yes.
Very good. Do you eat Yorkshire pudding?
In England, but I haven't come across any here. You need an Arga for that.
Exactly. That is one thing you do not find here in Berlin. I've never eaten Yorkshire pudding in Berlin. Do you have a Union Jack?
No.
No. Is Wayne Rooney your favourite football player?
No.
Who is your favourite football player?
Oh, I don't know. I have to say something now, don't I? Don't know. I don't know any of the names. Beckham, Ballack.
Beckham, OK. Is it true that you... we saw a photo earlier in the report of you standing next to Prince Charles. He looked really rather baffled when you were talking to him.
I know. He looked like he didn't believe a word I said, didn't he? I only saw that afterwards, of course.
Did you... I've heard this story that you told him off. You gave him a telling off.
Yes, he kept on poking around with his walking stick. I think we both had one thing in common. We weren't quite sober anymore. And he kept on sort of poking his walking stick in the grooves of my paving. And it was full of holes. So I said, you know, you can't do that. And he said, well, they're royal holes. And I said, well, I don't really care what sort of holes they are. I don't want any, you know, because there were all these women already in high-heeled shoes also making lots of holes. So, you know, that was
While you were giving Prince Charles this telling off, how were you addressing him? Your Royal Highness, stop messing about with my flower bed.
Yes, no, I didn't say, Charlie, don't. No, I didn't.
While we're talking about things British, I have never been to the Chelsea Flower Show. What am I missing out on?
Oh, it's sort of like the Ascot for gardening. It's just a fantastic event, and on the day where the Queen comes and Prince Charles, they're extremely relaxed. I've never seen them. I mean, Prince Charles is always quite relaxed, but even the Queen and all these visitors, all these I mean, there are people who one would never consider with gardening. Mick Jagger, Madonna. I mean, it's sort of there is serious.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. The people that walk around and get roses named after them and sniff at flowers, and it's wonderful. It's just the most amazing highlight of the gardening or of the year in the English calendar. It's quite something missing here.
I'm not going to let you go. We're going to have move to our quiz very quickly. Just give me, in a word, what is your favourite garden in the whole of Germany?
In the whole of Germany? Yeah. I don't know, Garden Academy.
Her very own Garden Academy here in Berlin, folks. OK. We're moving towards the end of the show. We've got a quiz at the end. I give you relatively quick questions. You give me quick answers.
Wow.
High tea or cafe and Kuchen, the German style?
High tea.
Head or heart?
Heart.
Organic or industrial?
Organic.
Flowers or vegetables?
Flowers.
Here's the big one. Who are the better gardeners, men or women?
Women.
Ooh. That's all with Gabriella Pape, the insightful gardener. If you've enjoyed our company as much as I have, come back next week. Just...